This is their lead. A mere 72 hours after the Chinese government agreed to put $500 million into an Indonesian project that will personally enrich Donald Trump, the president ordered a bailout for the Chinese government-owned cell phone maker. Can it truly be that naked of a quid pro quo?
We've seen that before with this president. I think the reason that he drew himself so closely to the Russians was that the Russians liked him and they invested in him, and that he has made decisions that seem to favor them more than what would be our national security interests. With China, I think it's the same thing. Turkey, he has projects over there. When you ask why does he like President Erdogan so much, well, there's a Trump Tower over in Turkey. So it does seem like the simplest explanation is the correct one. It's money.
So the Chinese government is putting $500 million into this Indonesian project that President Trump is invested in, was invested in before he was president. Doesn't this violate the emoluments clause of not personally becoming enriched by your position as president?
Yes, and we're not helpless, Allison. In Congress, we have oversight capabilities to make sure that no president is cashing in on his office and benefiting his family business.
Yeah, so what do you do?
Well, my Republican colleagues, I hope that Chairman Trey Gowdy on the Oversight Committee really moves into action and starts to find out how this decision was made, how it's benefiting the president. The best thing the president can do now, almost 2 years into his presidency, is completely divest. Too many issues have been raised over these 2 years. Divest, show us that the presidency is more important than your businesses.
Congressman Eric Swalwell, thank you very much for being here to talk about this. Obviously, it should get some attention in Congress, and we will follow up.
So.
Great to have you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for international viewers for watching. For you, CNN Talk is next. For our U.S. viewers, New Day continues right now. And I wasn't kidding. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your New Day. Chris is off. David Gregory joins me. Great to have you
Thank
here.
You.
Happy Tuesday. Here. Okay, so the First Lady is recovering at this hour after undergoing a procedure for a benign kidney condition, we're told. But there are still more questions than answers. The White House has offered very few details about exactly what is wrong, and it is not clear why Mrs. Trump would need to remain in the hospital for the rest of the week.
Meanwhile, the White House is still refusing to apologize for an AIDS morbid joke mocking Senator John McCain's health. Instead, the president is zeroing in on leakers around him, calling them, quote, traitors and cowards. All of this as Israel faces international criticism after nearly 60 Palestinians were killed in Gaza protests. The White House is standing by, Israel blaming the terror group Hamas for the tragic violence. Let's start our coverage with CNN's Caitlin Collins, live at the White House with our top story. Caitlin, good morning.
Well, David, the First Lady is in the White House this morning in the hospital this morning, recovering from that kidney illness. Aides are being tight-lipped about the details surrounding her medical procedure, but they are insistent that she is recovering without any trouble at a military hospital outside of Washington. President Trump remained at the White House during that procedure yesterday, but he did go and visit the First Lady for a little over an hour last night.
The First Lady underwent a long-planned medical procedure, and I'm pleased to report the procedure was a success, and Melania is already on the mend.
First Lady Melania Trump is recovering after undergoing an embolization procedure at Walter Reed Medical Center to treat what her office describes as a benign kidney condition. The First Lady's communications director offering limited details about the procedure, but noting that Mrs. Trump will likely remain at the hospital until the end of the week.
An embolization procedure, it's not really surgery. It's basically threading this catheter near the kidney and injecting a glue-type substance to try and stop blood flow to an area of the kidney where this abnormality is.
It's the most serious medical procedure a First Lady has undergone while in the White House in over 30 years, since Nancy Reagan had a mastectomy in October of 1987. The procedure coming as the First Lady's popularity continues to grow as she takes on a more prominent role in the White House. Mrs. Trump hosted the administration's first state dinner with the President and First Lady of France last month. And last week, she joined the president in welcoming home 3 Americans who had been detained in North Korea after unveiling her official Be Best platform focused on helping children.
The 3 main pillars of Be Best will include well-being, social media use, and opioid abuse.
President Trump wasn't at the hospital during his wife's procedure, but he visited with her for over an hour last night, tweeting that the procedure was a success and that Mrs. Trump is in good spirits. But before commenting on the First Lady, the president lashing out at his own staff for recent White House leaks, tweeting, "Leakers are traitors and cowards, and we will find out who they are."
It's not so much leaking as using the media to shiv each other.
Do you expect personnel changes as a result?
I do. Actually, yes, I do.
The president's criticism coming as the White House continues to refuse to apologize for White House aide Kelly Sadler's crass remark about Senator John McCain.
Why not just apologize so America doesn't think that that is an acceptable way of speaking inside this White House?
Well, I understand the focus on this issue, but it's going to be dealt with and has been dealt with internally.
Now, the White House has threatened to go after leakers before, but it's actually incredibly difficult because dozens of senior White House officials speak to reporters on a daily basis, at times even President Trump himself speaking to reporters. President Trump will be on Capitol Hill today for the first time since that remark that Kelly Sadler made was revealed to the media. He's going to attend the Senate Republican lunch. Now, Senator John McCain will not be at that lunch, but several of his allies who believe that the White House mishandled this entire situation will be.
Okay, Caitlin, thank you very much for the reporting. Let's discuss it. We want to bring in CNN political analyst John Avlon and associate editor for Real Clear Politics, A.B. Stoddard. A.B., let me start with you. It's hard to know how much to worry about the First Lady because we don't have a lot of details. And some of it sounds quite benign. Okay, a procedure, sure, we get it. It's they're making it sound like it's, nothing to be that concerned about. She went in, the president wasn't even there for the procedure. But then we hear things like, and she'll be in the hospital for the rest of the week. I mean, after a C-section, you're thrown out 2 days later. So, it's hard to know what we're being told out of the White House about her condition.
Right. Well, I do think that Dr. Sanjay Gupta initially was saying in describing this procedure, which he described as pretty routine, that you do need to stay still. And it might be out of an abundance of caution that she's staying a few extra days. I don't think, we should be speculating on whether or not she's has a condition that's more dangerous. She's an extremely private person, and I think that it was probably very hard for her. It sounds like it was scheduled, and she had to put this off until after she organized the entire state dinner for the Macrons, executed the dinner, launched her Be Best initiative, and had these other occasions in the spotlight, which she does not prefer to be in, and she probably has been putting this off. But if it requires further treatment, she's such a private person, I imagine she just doesn't want us to know that yet. Right. And so that's something we have to all hope that she heals well and quickly. But we have to just respect the fact that this is a person who's the polar opposite of her husband and really intends to be out of the spotlight and out of the news as much as possible.
And John, pretty arguably uncomfortable with this role as First Lady, particularly when there's been so much in the press about her marriage and about her husband's activity that's just awful.
Yeah, I think that's why there's a lot of sympathy for Melania Trump, the First Lady. Her approval numbers are well ahead of her husband's. Now, that tends to be a pattern with presidents and First Ladies. But I think Trump has created a problem for her at this moment, too, because of his lack of transparency and forthcomingness about his health. The dictating of a clean bill of health during the campaign to Dr. Brunstein, which we found out after the fact. Immortalized by Martin Short, I should say.
That's what I was thinking.
But I could see you thinking that. But look, obviously we wish her well. There's plenty of precedent for First Ladies getting medical procedures and being relatively private about them, finding out about them after the fact. And we all wish her well. But that also is about what we should do when health concerns come up. This is something that transcends politics. And I think the other thing waiting in the wings is the contrast between the White House staff about John McCain's illness and the well wishes we all should give the First Lady.
We will get to that momentarily. But first, A.B., so the president calls leakers in the White House traitors and cowards. But there are a lot of them. And so, there's the age-old debate. Are you a traitor if you're a leaker or a whistleblower? Here's how Kellyanne Conway sums it up.
Some leaks exist to hurt, colleagues. Some leaks exist because they disagree with the policies that are being put forth. But none of them are helpful. And I will tell you, there's something else that's going on in this White House, but not as badly as it was at the beginning, where it's not so much leaking as using the media to shiv each other. And that was going on quite a bit at the beginning of this administration, and it's less so now.
Do you expect personnel changes as a result?
I do. Actually, yes, I do.
AB, how should we see all of the leaks that come out of this White House?
Well, first of all, I don't expect personnel changes because they threatened to get rid of people before and hunt down the leakers and, punish them, and it just hasn't yet happened. We know that people have leaked from the top to the bottom, as you mentioned, including President Trump, who frequently speaks off the record with reporters. And there's two kinds here. I think we've seen people leak. Very serious leak out of the Oval Office from NSA employees about the president speaking to Russian officials about him firing FBI Director James Comey. And we've seen leaks that are just staff sort of, there's retribution, and they do leak to shiv each other, as Kellyanne described. But there's also these leaks about whether or not the president was going to withdraw troops from South Korea, and John Kelly had to talk him down. Really major policy decisions that they have to pull him back from. The time that he wanted to pull out of NAFTA a year ago, and leaks came out that Ivanka and Jared had to get Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, to get President Trump to sort of calm down and not pull the trigger on that. So there are often these kinds of leaks that people inside the White House want us to believe are whistleblowing leaks that they're trying to save the country with, and that they're forced to do in the name of steadying the ship. I just don't see anything changing, though. This is a pattern from day one, and I don't see people getting fired for it.
John, I think it's important to point out, as somebody who's covered the White House, what kind of thing happens. And they're hardly unique here. I mean, the Clinton White House used to leak a lot. There were designated people whose job it was to leak and work over certain media figures to get a story out, to massage and manipulate. Well, I think, the Reagan White House leaked a lot. I think there's a gossipy aspect to this, which reflects how there's a breakdown in discipline because people feel like they want to try to influence policy, correct mistakes. And you do have a president who, it's not just tone. You said that before. I think that's absolutely true. He not only leaks to the press, but he is also talking to outsiders. And he wants to operate in a very transparent way, even without his name, in the public domain.
Yeah, in his way, Donald Trump is radically transparent.
He is.
I mean, the Twitter feed itself is like Nixon tapes in real time. It's amazing. You get to see what's happening through his head. And that's wonderful. I hope he never stops for the good of the Republic. But people are, look, all administrations leak, some more than others. Tone does come from the top. Some of the leaks in Washington are, shockingly self-interested. Some are prevent defense on policy. And others legitimately are whistleblowers. AB mentioned the leak from the Oval when the president's talking to the Russian foreign minister the day after firing Comey.
Yeah.
Yes, that is a breach of national security protocol. I would also argue that is very much at the level of whistleblower, given that he's talking to the foreign power which attempted to influence our elections on his behalf about why he fired the FBI director.
Right.
Okay, next topic. Let's talk about this ongoing controversy with the White House aide, Kelly Sadler, who made the nasty joke about John McCain. Can I take the White House's position for a moment, AB?
Sure.
Okay, let's do this. Let's do this exercise. Isn't this an internal matter? She didn't say this publicly. She said this in a meeting. It was leaked. And who are we in the press to tell the White House how to deal with an internal nasty joke?
Well, it's not really up to the media at this point. The daughter of John McCain, Meghan McCain, told the public that she's been apologized to and that she requested a public apology and hasn't got one and is waiting for one and can't believe that Kelly Sadler still has her job. That's a pretty important point here. Cindy McCain, the wife of John McCain, weighed in on Twitter about this. This is a family in a deep amount of pain and suffering. And then now you see, I think a little late, but Republican colleagues in the Senate coming around and saying publicly, wow, can't believe this is in day 5 and you guys aren't doing the right thing. And so the pressure is coming from the allies and friends and colleagues of John McCain, and that makes it a media story in day 5 or 6. The White House has made it clear. We know that the culture of the White House is that you're not allowed to apologize President Trump sees that as a sign of weakness. And you will get in trouble if you apologize for anything without his approval. And he has refused to honor and acknowledge John McCain's heroism from day one, and we know that as well.
Yeah, there's bad blood.
And I think that Raj was forced to come out and use the word internal 12 times or whatever he did because they want to rebrand this episode as a leak matter.
They're fundamentally misreading the problem. The outrage is not that there was a leak. That may be of an operational concern to them, and that's their prerogative to deal with it. But the fundamental outrage is that a member of the White House staff dissed a senator dealing with a terminal cancer diagnosis who is an American hero of his own party. And the reason they haven't apologized is it apparently has the benediction of the president in private.
Right.
That's the outrage. The leaking problem is a separate operational issue. And to try to flip that script speaks to, I think, the disconnect between the White House and basic
there's also this is actually kind of simple. I mean, I would tell the White House what to do is you say, you know, we really wish this kind of stuff wasn't leaked, but this was clearly over the line. We've had our problems with John McCain, but this is completely unacceptable. What I don't understand is why the chief of staff, General Kelly, who has no problem lecturing the press about how to handle military families, doesn't come out and say this is just over the line. So anyway, we're going to leave it there. A.B., John, thank you very much. Meantime, these violent protests are flaring up again in the Palestinian territories this morning, following the deadliest day in Gaza in 4 years, as Israel and the White House blame Hamas for Monday's bloodshed. CNN's Ian Lee, live in Gaza with the latest on the ground there. Ian.
Good morning, David. We're following the protests here today. So far, there's been dozens of people at this camp that we've seen. They have lit some tires on fire. We've seen the drones overhead responding with tear gas, and one person it looks like was shot and taken away by the ambulance. It isn't the same numbers, though, that we saw yesterday. We're still expecting more people to come out after these funerals, which are taking place right about now. But other places along this border, we're monitoring them as well. What these protesters are doing is they're getting close to that border, and that's when we see that tear gas and fire. And that's what really created yesterday's death toll, that 60 people killed, including 8 children. One of those children was an infant, months old, that died from tear gas asphyxiation. Today, though, we're expecting more people to slowly come out here, but you are having this kind of war of words. The White House blaming Hamas for this. Hamas says the blood is on the hands of the Americans, but when you talk to people, they say they're frustrated with the situation in Gaza. It's been under a blockade by Israel and Egypt for over a decade. They're also frustrated with the U.S. Embassy move. They say that they're just not being heard, but they say that, they'll continue to come out here to vent that anger. Allison?
Okay, Ian Lee, thank you very much for reporting on the ground for us. Meanwhile, President Trump blasting the media over leaks coming from his White House. He calls the leakers traitors and cowards. The White House still refuses to apologize for the leaked comment by that aide who mocked Senator John McCain's health. So let's bring in CNN political commentator Ana Navarro and Amy Kremer. She is co-chair of Women Vote Trump. Ladies, thank you very much for being here. So, Amy, the White House calls this insult from an aide about John McCain's health an internal matter. Do you think it requires a public apology?
Allison, I actually don't. I think that Kelly Sadler already called Meghan McCain and apologized to her and the family, and I think it should be left at that. Now, just on that, sorry to interrupt, but just on that note, it sounds like Meghan McCain was promised or said she was promised a public apology and was hoping for that. Well, it was an internal conversation, and we don't know exactly what was said there. I believe that probably what was happening was the discussion about whipping votes or vote counting on Gina Haspel's nomination to head the CIA, and Kelly Sadler probably made the comment that he's dying, and there's truth to that. And also, I want to say, you're talking about days before that, you're in the media talking about who's invited to John McCain's funeral, which I think is an odd conversation to have anyway.
We're not joking
but that's
about it.
our
okay. We're not joking about it. Everybody understands how dire the situation is.
But you don't know for sure that Kelly Sadler was joking about it either. She was probably making a matter-of-fact statement, which is the truth, and it was leaked to the press as she was joking about it. I don't know how that could be taken as funny. I don't know how it could be taken as funny, Allison. Okay. I mean, I don't know how anybody could seriously take that as funny.
Okay, Anna, go ahead.
Well, first of all, you know, I'm dying. Amy, you're dying. We're all dying. We just don't know when. And I think, frankly, what's happening here is that the White House is irritated that John McCain is not dying of cancer. He's living with cancer. And he is choosing to make every single day on this earth something that's meaningful and counts. And he is still confronting Donald Trump for his outrages. He is still speaking conscience and conviction and principle. He is reminding Republicans what we used to be. It's very irritating, I suspect, to the White House on this torture issue because McCain speaks with a moral certitude that few can. That of a man who was actually tortured for years, who has experienced it in his own bones and his own skins, and has got the literal scars to show for it. So no, John McCain is not dying with cancer. He is living with cancer. But Anna, and all of us are dying. And for you to continue saying that when you know how hurtful it is to the family is something that I don't understand. But, well, you know, we all have the First Amendment right. I do think that the White House should have apologized because I think there's a lot of people who've lost friends, loved ones to cancer, who are living today with people who have terminal illnesses. And, you know, it's hurtful. It's offensive.
But do you think,
this is the White House. This is not some corporation.
I just want to say, first of all, as somebody whose father is suffering with liver cancer right now, I understand. I can imagine what this family thinks. But if it were me and somebody said something that hurt my feelings or hurt my mother's feelings, and they came to me and apologized, I wouldn't ask them to go make a big deal out of it and to the public. That's not necessary here. What matters is that she gave a heartfelt apology to the family. That's my personal belief. And I think the whole thing should be dropped. I don't think that we should continue on with this. I don't know why the press is such in a frenzy over it. Just let it go.
Well, do you think that I understand, but Amy, do you think it would have gone away if on the first or second day she had apologized publicly?
I don't know. I mean, I honestly probably, but I don't know. And the other thing I would say, Allison and Anna, is honestly, I mean, if somebody doesn't want to apologize, why would you want to force them to apologize? Don't tell me you're sorry if you truly don't mean it.
If it's not genuine. Yeah, I hear you. I think that that's a good point. So, Anna,
I think that's a perfect point to it.
Yeah,
look,
but what does make this go away? I mean, we are stuck in this loop because it doesn't feel satisfying. We don't know what the internal, what action has been taken. Is this okay? Is this tone okay in the White House? So what does make this go away, Anna?
Look, I don't know that it goes away because it seems that it goes away momentarily and then it comes back. Part of the reason that they really can't apologize is because Donald Trump has done much of the same. Donald Trump has been attacking John McCain with cancer or without cancer. He was a POW. He served this country since the age of 17. He is a national hero who Donald Trump has been attacking and calling a loser and saying he doesn't like him and he was only a hero because he was captured from day one practically of his campaign. He continued attacking and mocking him and leading chants against him at CPAC, at rallies in Arizona, even after the cancer diagnosis. So why can't they apologize? Because then Donald Trump would have to apologize. Donald Trump has called John McCain's family as well and promised he would never do it again and apologize, and then has gone out and done it again. So of course it is a tone. Of course they can't apologize. It comes from the top. It stinks from the top.
And can I want to add something to this. Yesterday when the news broke about Melania, 2 minutes before, I had a breaking news alert about Harry Reid on my phone. 2 minutes later, the news alert came about Melania being in the hospital. As of this morning, right before we went on air, John McCain had tweeted to Harry Reid to get better. Not one tweet to Melania. So the bad blood goes both ways. Don't pretend that this is only going one way because it's not.
Do you think, Amy, that the tone comes from the top and that the president sets the tone in the White House?
I do think the president sets the tone in the White House. Yes, I do.
And so when there's a nasty tone, do you think it's the president's responsibility to try to fix that?
I don't think that the president didn't say this. If it was said by Kelly Sadler, and she apologized. And I think that that is sufficient for her to call and give a private apology to the family. It was not a public statement. It should have never been leaked. And she was, in fact, doing her job, talking about vote counting. She made a matter-of-fact statement. I mean, that's all there is to it. I don't think she was joking about it. I don't know how you could make it into a joke. And I think it's shameful that anybody would go and leak something like this, but it just shows that people are out for themselves and not about what's best for the country.
I'm curious about that. What do you think it shows that this White House leaks so much, Amy?
I mean, I think it shows that people are out for themselves. I think that, they get attention. They leak for numerous reasons. I don't think it's helpful. And I think it's shameful. And whoever's doing it, if they were caught, I think they should be fired. I don't think it's helpful to our country when there's so much other stuff going on in the world right now and so many things that we should be focused on. And to be focused on something like this, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think that the country and the people in this country deserve better.
And a last word. We only have 15 seconds.
Look, people leak because they want to make a point about having been in the room. It's an ego boost. But also in this case, because there's no loyalty. Most politicians have a team of loyalists that have been with them for years, if not decades. Donald Trump doesn't. He's got a bunch of people who are clawing all over themselves to see who's on top and who gets on top. We have this kind of drama. We have seen backstabbing in this White House from day one. And Donald Trump's tweet yesterday is laughable. The first part of the tweet, he says, oh, these are minor things. It's not really a leak. It's all made up by the press. But damn it, if we catch those leakers, those cowards and those traitors, we're going to get them. So which is it? Are there leaks or are there traitors and leakers? It makes no sense.
I think there's
both.
And
again,
I think
it's only
there's
Tuesday.
All right. On that note, Ana Navarro, Amy Kramer, thank you both very much for your perspectives.
Thank you.
David.
Allison, thanks. The White House is blaming Hamas for the deadly violence in Gaza. What are Palestinians saying about the deadly confrontations? We will talk to a former legal advisor to the president of the Palestinian Authority coming up next. The border violence on the terror group Hamas. Listen.
We're aware of the reports of continued violence in Gaza today. The responsibility for these tragic deaths rests squarely with Hamas. Hamas is intentionally and cynically provoking this response. And as the Secretary of State said, Israel has the right to defend itself.
Joining me now, former legal advisor to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, Diana Boutou. Diana, good to have you. We're on a little bit of a satellite delay, so as I try to jump in, bear with me. I don't want to make it seem like I'm interrupting you, but let me have you begin by reacting to that characterization of the horrible violence we're seeing on the border.
This is exactly what we expected, which is the U.S. and the Israelis toe in toe blaming victims. At every junction, Israel has had an opportunity whether to put down its snipers or to not put down its snipers. And it has deliberately chosen to kill Palestinians, including 8 children just yesterday alone, including a disabled man, all because it has the ability to do so and because nobody is stopping it. I would have expected that the United States would be second guessing now its decision to move the embassy to Jerusalem because that is illegal. And instead, what it has done, it is clamped down alongside with Israel and saying that that Israel has the ability and, in fact, has the right to kill Palestinians when it does not. This is a clear violation of international law, and I hope that the world is going to step up and start sanctioning Israel.
Right. Well, there's obviously different views about whether it's a violation of international law, whether the rules of engagement have been actually broken. Let me ask you this. What is actually the declared goal of the March of Return on the part of Hamas?
It's not a declared goal of the part of Hamas. It's on the part of Palestinians who are living in Gaza and throughout.
But
throughout
Hamas organizes the Gazans. Hamas organizes the protesters, and you know that.
Which is one simple goal. Palestinians want to return. They haven't been allowed to return to their homes for 70 years because of the fact that they're simply not Jewish. I want to get back, however, to the issue of rules of engagement.
No, hold on. I want to continue with my question. Hold on. Let me just say, excuse me, Diana. Hold on one second.
We're not allowed to simply shoot. Excuse me, I cannot hear you. We're not allowed to simply shoot people because they're standing in a protest. There has to be a clear line of threat. Not a single Israeli has been injured in this whatsoever. And so what Israel's doing is simply gunning people down.
Okay, Liz, I understand that perspective. Can you hear me now? Diana, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, but you couldn't hear me a moment ago. Because it's pretty clear.
Sorry, the line is going in and out.
Okay. I'll say this question. If you can't hear it, then we'll move on. In fact, Hamas has indicated that its declared goal is to end the Israeli state through this March of Return to reclaim all of Palestine. Is that correct?
What the goal is by the organizers, as they've said very clearly, that they simply want to be able to return to their homes. Returning to their homes is an internationally enshrined right that refugees around the world have. And that's what Palestinians want. It's been peaceful protests that have been met with where Palestinians have been gunned down by the Israelis. I simply do not understand this issue where people continue to blame the victim.
Well, I want to clarify this, because to return to Palestine would be to displace Israel. Is that not the express goal of Hamas with these protests?
No, not at all. In fact, people have been saying, and Hamas has already indicated, and all the Palestinian factions have indicated, that they are willing to accept a two-state settlement. It is Israel that's never recognized Palestine's right to exist. The demand that Palestinians return to their homes is simply that, is that they want to return to their homes because they have a right to do so. It's not a question of extinguishing anybody. It's a right to return to their homes and to end this issue of Jewish privilege and Jewish supremacy. That's what this is about. The fact that Palestinians haven't been able to return to their homes is because the international community has failed them for over 70 years now.
Do you recognize, because you raised a really good point about recognizing Palestinian sovereignty and a Palestinian state, do you also recognize that Israelis have a right to return, that in fact the country of Israel is a fulfillment of that right to return to its ancient homeland, and that it has a right to exist?
I'm somebody who believes that this place can and should be one state where everybody, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Druze, all of the people who are living here have equal rights and should be living in equality. I don't believe in one group having supremacy over another. This is something that I have been speaking about and writing about for years, and people have been working about
Diana,
for years.
that's not my question.
What I think we have to work against is this system of privilege. And what people are talking about when they talk about a Jewish state is simply continuing to enshrine a system of exclusive Jewish privilege.
This is not a filibuster opportunity. I'm asking you a simple question. Do you believe that Israel has a right to exist alongside the legitimate Palestinian sovereignty in a state as well?
Nobody has denied that. In fact, it's been quite the opposite. The PLO has recognized Israel's right to exist. Palestinian factions have recognized Israel's right to exist. It's quite the opposite. That Israel has never recognized my right to exist in freedom and in sovereignty. They've never recognized my right to exist in equality. It's quite the opposite.
So let me ask you one final question. Try to be, because, this is not obviously is a horrible time to think about the idea of a peace process resuming. Can you imagine a scenario in your most optimistic state where something comes out of this period, both the violence and the moving of the embassy, that can restart a process that can be constructive? Or are we in a period where that kind of process will be dormant for the foreseeable future?
I don't think that negotiations are going to resume, and I actually don't think that they're going to be the answer. I was somebody who was part of those negotiations for 25 years, and over the course of 25 years, all that we saw was the number of settlements expand, the number of settlers triple in number, to the point where there's now close to 700,000 Israelis living in the West Bank, making the idea of a two-state settlement impossible. I think that instead we should be moving down the path of recognizing what's right and what's wrong. And what's wrong is the denial of freedom, 51 years of the denial of freedom. It's time for the international community to start putting in place sanctions against Israel, rather than simply allowing Israel to do whatever it wants. This last move with the embassy has given Israel the green light and shown Israel that it has the right and has the ability to not only steal Palestinian land, but be rewarded for it.
Okay, now to royal wedding news. Is Meghan Markle's father really not going to her wedding to Prince Harry? More severe weather could be heading for the plains and the Northeast. Let's bring in meteorologist Chad Myers with our forecast. What are you seeing, Chad?
I'm seeing the potential for big thunderstorms right through big cities today. That's the real threat into New York, into Connecticut, into Boston as well. This weather's brought to you by Purina. Your pet, our passion. So let's get to it. This orange area and yellow area, that's the area for wind damage today. And it's going to be right through New York City. It is going to be right through Connecticut and all of the Northeast states. Here we go, hour by hour. By 2 o'clock, the storms are firing in Pennsylvania, somewhere around Du Bois. And then by 4 o'clock, approaching I-95, but not there yet. And by 6 o'clock, in the heat of the day, we get storms all the way from Boston right on down to almost Charlotte. And some of these will be severe with significant wind damage because today's going to be 89 degrees in New York City. That's heat, that's humidity, that's the fuel to the fire. Now, tomorrow, not so much. New York City, you're 25 degrees cooler. David.
Wow, I'm still processing that.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while.
And also this, another midair scare to tell you about. A flight in China was forced to make an emergency landing after the cockpit's windshield suddenly blew out. The co-pilot, who was wearing a seatbelt, was sucked halfway out of the plane. Passengers had to wear oxygen masks and reported hearing a deafening sound. The co-pilot suffered only scratches and a sprained wrist. Last month, of course, a woman on a Southwest flight died after an engine exploded, breaking a window. She was also pulled halfway out of the plane.
Okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
What's happening with windshields and windows? Is there an expiration date on these things that is coming due suddenly?
Right. I mean, it's not something that we've heard about in a long time, but they've got to take a look at if there's anything where the glass is under stress or is deteriorated in some way that you could have this, because this doesn't seem right.
You know, I'm a nervous flyer.
Yeah.
And just when you think you've heard everything that could possibly go wrong, there's a new one invented.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah.
All right. Meanwhile, we need to get you to the royal wedding news. It's just days away now, but there is drama unfolding. There are reports that Meghan Markle's father will not be walking his daughter down the aisle after all. This comes amid an embarrassing revelation over some staged photos. CNN's Max Foster is live in Windsor. He spoke with people close to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle just this morning. So, Max, what are they saying there?
Well, I have to say, they're absolutely devastated, it seems. They're both really upset about what's happened. They're really worried about Thomas Ragland, and they want the media to give him a break. What they're saying is that, you know, there was no one here in the UK on the palace side who were particularly embarrassed by the photos. Obviously, it was an awkward situation with the photos, but at no point did Meghan change her mind about her father walking her down the aisle. She'd still like him to walk her down the aisle. But there's been this horrible situation. He's decided he can't come, and now it's got really tangled up in their media arrangements as well. So they're now saying to the media, please leave this guy alone, give him a chance to change his mind. This is just a few days before the wedding. The bride hasn't got her father to walk her down the aisle. Who does she then ask? Is it her mother? Is it an usher? Who's going to give the speech at the reception? They're really upset by this, and they don't want this narrative to go out, that the palace in any way was embarrassed and wanted him to pull out. They want him to come. So it's a bit of an odd situation here, but something very much being led by Harry and Meghan, and both of them feel the same way about this, I'm told.
Okay, Max, listen, we have 4 more days left. It's possible that there can be some resolution. It's possible that something can change, obviously, before Saturday. And we hope there is. But on Friday, just to let everybody know, I'll be seeing Max shortly because on Friday I'll be live from Windsor to preview the royal wedding here on New Day. Then on Saturday, we will be live for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's special day. Royal wedding coverage starts Saturday morning at 4 a.m. Eastern on CNN. So, David.
That's going to fit. Well, I mean, don't you sympathize with anybody who is going through this? I mean, the notion that there's going to be media restraint on the royal wedding, I'm sympathetic. I hope they work it out.
Me too, because there's always drama around even just any regular wedding. It's a time of high drama.
I'm kind of excited. It's the first. Did you watch Charles and Diane?
Yes.
That started even earlier. Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, so my sister and I watched really early. So
okay, this one 4 a.m. on the East Coast.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out over the next couple of days. Meanwhile, a former NBC News correspondent says she was sexually harassed by Tom Brokaw when she was a young reporter. Why is she speaking out misconduct made against fired Today anchor Matt Lauer? And it concluded NBC News did not have a broader problem with sexual harassment. But one former NBC correspondent, Linda Vester, disagrees. She's accused legendary anchor Tom Brokaw of sexual harassment. And Linda Vester joins us now. Linda, great to have you here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You were waiting. You were calling for this internal report to come out. And they seem to be dragging their feet, or at least not responding in a timely fashion, then you came forward with your accusations against Tom Brokaw, and lo and behold, the internal investigation and the internal report came out. Do you feel some sense of satisfaction for having forced the issue?
Well, I think the internal report was deeply flawed. That's a problem. Because women have contacted me in recent days to say that they did not feel that they could fully speak candidly to the NBC lawyers, and others have contacted me to say that they didn't feel that they were properly interviewed. And when you have an internal investigation, when you're talking to the lawyers for the company that signs your paycheck, women can't speak freely, and that was the case here. And so what harassment issues there? NPR, National Public Radio, did the same thing to signal transparency and willingness. Fox News Channel brought in counsel as well. And that shows that a transparency and willingness to address problems with sexual misconduct. I don't understand why NBC isn't